If Lagos had angels, Deborah was one of them. At least, that's what everyone thought. She wasn't just beautiful. She was the daughter of Pastor Jude, the firebrand preacher whose voice was heard across the city's radio stations. Deborah led worship every Sunday at Living Word Assembly with her eyes closed and hands lifted, tears streaming down her cheeks like heaven had kissed her. But beneath that angelic voice and perfect skin was a ticking bomb. Deborah was tired of pretending. Tired of the long skirts, the daily devotions, the pressure to be flawless. Everyone expected her to walk on water, but no one asked if she was drowning. Her smile was rehearsed. Her prayers memorized. Her purity? A story for Sunday mornings. Lagos didn't care if you were a pastor's daughter. The city had two sides, daylight and darkness, and Deborah had just started flirting with the shadows. It all began with one message. Sharon, the most followed girl on campus, had slid into her DMs. "You sing like a star, babe. Have you ever seen the real stage in this city?" Deborah had stared at the message for hours. Sharon wasn't just anyone. She was a Lagos goddess, satin skin, flawless makeup, men crawling at her feet. She moved like she owned the streets and made sin look like luxury. She was the kind of girl Deborah's father warned about every Sunday. And yet Deborah replied, "Where?" Sharon sent an address. Victoria Island. Friday night. 10 p.m. dressed to kill. Deborah closed her phone and stared at her Bible. Her fingers were trembling. That Friday night, while her father thought she was at an all-night vigil, Deborah stepped out of the house with a face full of borrowed makeup and a dress she hid inside her school bag. She had never worn heels that high or lips that red. The bouncer at the club didn't even ask for her ID. That's how grown she looked. Inside, Lagos was louder than the church. Girls in glitter. Men with eyes like wolves. And in the corner, Sharon waved, drink in hand. "You came," she smiled. "Let's see how holy you stay after midnight." Deborah should have turned back. But the music was too loud, and her curiosity had already sinned. Deborah stepped into the club like a sinner stepping into fire. But instead of burning, she felt alive. The music was loud. Smoke curled in the air, thick with perfume and danger. Her heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear. It was freedom. For the first time, no one was calling her the pastor's daughter. No one cared if her skirt covered her knees. No one whispered about modesty. She was just another pretty face on the night of Lagos. Sharon pulled her close. "Stay by me," she said, sliding a shot glass into Deborah's hand. "If anyone asks, your name is Debbie." Deborah stared at the glass. It smelled sharp bitter. She had never touched alcohol in her life. "I don't drink," she stammered. Sharon laughed. "Relax, church girl. This isn't communion wine." Deborah hesitated, then drank. The burn in her throat was instant. She coughed, eyes watering, but Sharon cheered. "That's my girl." That night, everything moved fast. The lights, the music, the way people looked at her. She danced like she had never danced, wild, free, untamed. A stranger slipped a hand around her waist. "You're not from here," he said, leaning in. His cologne was strong, expensive. "What's your name?" "Debbie," she whispered. He smiled. "Beautiful." Deborah smiled back, but her old self was screaming somewhere deep inside. She ignored it. Hours passed in a blur. More drinks. More dancing. More lies. At 2:43 a.m., she stumbled out of the club with Sharon, heels in one hand, her wig slightly crooked. Her phone buzzed. "A missed call, Dad." Deborah froze. Panic rushed in like cold water. "I have to go," she muttered. Sharon rolled her eyes. "Tell him you were at the fellowship. Don't act new." Deborah nodded, her voice shaking. "Yeah, fellowship." But as she slid into the back of a Bolt, wiping off her lipstick with a tissue, a sick feeling settled in her stomach. Not because of the lie, but because of how easy it had become. She got home just before 4 a.m. The compound was quiet. She tiptoed past her father's study, climbed the stairs, and locked her door. She looked in the mirror. The Deborah staring back wasn't the same girl who sang at the altar. She was someone else now, and she wasn't sure she could go back. Sunday morning came with fire. Deborah stood in a white lace gown before the church, holding the microphone with trembling fingers. The choir swayed behind her. The drums beat gently. Her voice rose like incense, but it wasn't reaching heaven. She could feel it. She wasn't singing from her heart anymore. She was performing. Pastor Jude, her father, beamed proudly from the front row. His angel was leading worship again, but Deborah could barely look at him. Every hallelujah tasted like guilt. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She shouldn't have looked, but she did. Sharon, babe, last night was wild. You sure you're not possessed? Fire, fire. Deborah swallowed hard and pressed the phone against her thigh. She kept singing, but her hands were sweating. After the service, she tried to escape straight to her room. But her mother, Mama J, stood in the hallway with arms folded. You look tired, she said, eyes sharp like razors. I'm fine, Mummy, Deborah replied too quickly. Mama J stepped forward, lifting Deborah's chin with 2 fingers. Why is your voice hoarse? And your eyes, have you been crying? No. Maybe I'm just tired from schoolwork. Her mother studied her. You smell different. Deborah's breath caught. New perfume, she said, forcing a smile. Mama J didn't believe it, but she said nothing more, just watched her daughter walk away with the look of a woman who knew something was crumbling. In her room, Deborah locked the door and dropped to her knees. She tried to pray, but her mouth was dry. No words came, just the sound of the city outside her window and the ringing silence of her guilt. But by Tuesday, the silence was gone. That's when he showed up. His name was Oscar. Tall, older, design everything. Sharon introduced him with a wink. This is the one that makes Legos spin, she whispered. Oscar didn't smile much, but his eyes, they studied Deborah like a puzzle he planned to solve. You're different, he said. No, I'm not, she replied too quickly. He chuckled. That's what they all say before they fall. He offered her a drink, and something else she couldn't name. Not quite a promise, not quite a threat. Deborah took the drink, and that's when the door she thought she'd cracked open swung in. The devil didn't knock twice, because the first time she opened it willingly. Deborah had never worn a dress that short, never worn lashes that heavy, never walked into a room where everyone stopped and stared. Oscar had sent a driver. Sharon had sent a box. Inside was a glittering gown, gold heels, perfume that smelled like sin, and a note. Tonight, you stop pretending. The hotel rooftop felt like a palace in the sky. Lagos glowed beneath her, a city that never judged, just consumed. Oscar greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and a glass already in his hand. You clean up well, Debbie, he said, his voice low and calm. But I think you came here to get a little dirty. She laughed awkwardly, but Oscar wasn't joking. The night blurred. Expensive drinks. Flashes from phones. Deborah dancing under purple lights with girls who didn't blink when men touched them. Sharon whispered things in her ear that made her heart race, and her morals hide. Oscar watched her the whole time. When the night ended, he handed her a gift. A velvet box. Inside, an iPhone 15 Pro Gold. You deserve beautiful things, he said. But beauty comes at a price. Deborah didn't ask what the price was. She just nodded, even though her hands were shaking. She got home past 3 a.m., shoes in hand, mascara smudged, heart pounding. She tiptoed past her sleeping siblings, slipped into the bathroom, and stared into the mirror. What stared back was stunning, but it wasn't her. The lashes, the lips, the glittering neckline. It was all borrowed. None of it belonged to the girl who used to cry during worship. That girl was gone. As she undressed, she noticed a faint red mark on her waist. Oscar's grip from earlier. It stung now, like her body was trying to warn her. She stared at it. Then she covered it with powder. At school, she smiled more. Lied better. Dodged Grace's questions with ease. But her phone never stopped buzzing. Oscar, you owe me dinner tonight. Sharon, baby, come with me to the yacht party. Mama J, Deborah, are you okay? You've changed. That last message stayed unread. Deborah kept going deeper and deeper until she stopped looking for the way back. Grace had always been the quiet type, but not stupid. She noticed everything. Lately, something about Deborah hasn't added up. The late arrivals to class, the half-finished assignments, the new designer bags, the faint scent of alcohol that Deborah tried to hide with body spray. Grace didn't say anything at first. She waited, watched, and then one day she followed her. It was a Friday. Deborah had told their group she was going to choir rehearsal at the main church auditorium. But Grace saw her sneak out through the back gate in tight jeans and a blouse so unfamiliar it looked like someone else had dressed her. So Grace followed, quietly, carefully. The Bolt car Deborah entered sped toward Victoria Island. Grace took the next one. She arrived at a rooftop bar, dimly lit, where the air reeked of perfume and power. She watched Deborah step out of the car, hug a tall man in a black suit, and laugh like she didn't have a prayer life. It broke Grace's heart. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she waited for Deborah and pulled her aside after class. "We need to talk." Deborah smiled too quickly. "About what?" Grace folded her arms. "Don't play dumb with me. I know where you went last night." Deborah's smile faded. "Grace, I can explain." "Explain what?" Grace snapped. "That you've been sneaking out? Lying to everyone? Living like someone I don't even recognize." Deborah's hands trembled. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand." Grace's voice cracked. "You were the one person I looked up to. You sang like heaven, Deborah. Now you come to class smelling like clubs." Deborah looked away, biting her lip. "Is it money? Is someone forcing you? That man, who is he?" Deborah stayed silent. Grace stepped back. "Deborah, are you in danger?" That one word, danger, echoed like a warning in Deborah's ears. She thought of Oscar's grip, voice, and how he looked at her like she was a thing he owned. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to cry. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "I'm fine." Grace stared at her for a long moment. "You're not. And if you don't get help now, you might not make it out." Then she walked away. Deborah stood frozen, heart pounding. Because Grace didn't threaten her. She promised her. Oscar wasn't texting anymore. He was calling. Constantly. Deborah would wake up to 3 missed calls. Then another one during class. Then a voice note. "You're not answering me. You think this is a game? I made you. Don't forget that." At first it scared her. Then it began to suffocate her. Everywhere she went, she felt watched. She deleted his name from her phone and changed it to unknown. But even that didn't stop the panic that gripped her chest every time her screen lit up. He had given her a phone, a necklace, a designer bag, gifts but with invisible chains. One evening, she came out of class to see his black Benz parked by the gate. She turned to run. Too late. The door swung open, and he stepped out, calm and sharp in a wine-colored suit. "Get in," he said. "I have choir practice." He didn't blink. "Now." Deborah obeyed. The silence in the car was louder than the city. The windows were tinted. The doors locked automatically. She suddenly felt small. Oscar didn't speak for minutes. Then he turned, his eyes cold. "You've been avoiding me." Deborah forced a smile. "No, I've just been." He grabbed her wrist. "Hard." She gasped. He leaned in. "Let me tell you something, Debbie. I don't like girls who forget who they belong to." Deborah's heart thundered. His fingers loosened. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a new gold bracelet. "Here, to match the necklace I gave you. Wear it." Her hands trembled as she took it. "Say thank you," he said softly, but steel was behind his words. "Thank you." Oscar smiled, kissed her cheek, and unlocked the door. "Now go sing to your Jesus. I'll see you later." She stepped out on shaky legs. He drove off. Deborah stood there, the bracelet burning against her skin like it was cursed. When she got home that night, she locked her room door and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked expensive, made up, wanted, but inside she felt like a prisoner. Not in a cage, but in someone else's hands. And worst of all, she had handed him the key. Sunday came again, but this time, Deborah didn't feel holy. She sat in the front row, face powdered, lips glossed, dressed long enough to fool them all. The choir behind her hummed. The congregation waited. Pastor Jude was praying in tongues. But Deborah's mind was miles away. Underneath her sleeve was a bruise. Dark, purple, fresh, from Oscar. It had happened the night before. She had said no to following him to a party. He smiled, but his grip had spoken louder. With a quiet rage, his fingers dug into her arm, saying, "You're mine now." Now she sat in church with that mark beneath her white lace blouse. Worship poured from her lips, but the bruise was singing louder. After the service, she moved quickly, hoping to disappear before anyone saw her hands shaking. But Mama J caught her at the stairway. "Deborah." Deborah froze. "Yes, Mom?" Mama J stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Come." In the kitchen, while the others were changing clothes and chatting about the service, Mama J placed a chopping board on the counter and handed Deborah onions to slice. But her voice was low, too calm. "You've been distant." Deborah stayed quiet. "You don't eat with us anymore. You don't laugh like you used to. Your eyes are tired. Your voice hollow." "I'm just stressed from school," Deborah said, slicing onions too fast. Mama J reached out suddenly and caught Deborah's wrist. The sleeve lifted slightly. The bruise peeked through. Deborah froze. "What is this?" Mama J asked quietly. Deborah yanked her hand back. "It's nothing. Don't lie to me. I burned myself while ironing." "You haven't touched the iron in 2 weeks," her mother said, voice growing colder. "Who did this to you?" Deborah looked away. "No one." Mama J exhaled deeply. "Deborah, I may not know everything you're doing, but I know when my daughter is in trouble." Deborah's throat tightened. "You don't have to say it now," Mama said softly. "But listen to me carefully. Any man who marks your skin is not a man. He's a prison. And one day, you'll wake up with no keys left." Tears welled in Deborah's eyes, but she blinked them away. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "Oscar, I'm outside." Deborah pulled away. "I have to study." She ran out the back door. Mama stood there, staring at the kitchen knife Deborah had dropped. And silently, she began to pray. Because she knew, whatever her daughter was caught in, it had already gone too far. Grace had held her tongue for weeks, but silence was no longer safe. She watched Deborah slip further and further away. The eyes that once lit up during worship were now dull, shadowed. The girl who once prayed before exams now avoided saying, "Amen." Grace had tried patience. She had tried hints. But now, something inside her had snapped. After class, she waited by the stairwell, blocking Deborah's path. "We're talking. Now." Deborah sighed. "Not today, Grace." "No. You don't get to walk away this time." Students brushed past them, whispering. Deborah looked around, nervous. "You're making a scene." Grace stepped closer. "You're already living one." Deborah tried to push past. Grace grabbed her hand. That's when she saw it. The edge of the bruise on Deborah's wrist was partially hidden, but unmistakable. Grace's voice dropped. "Deborah, what is this?" Deborah pulled her hand away. "Leave it alone." "I won't." "Who did this to you?" Deborah's eyes darted around, panic blooming. "No one." Grace's heart sank. "It was that man, wasn't it? The one you sneak out to see." Deborah said nothing. "I knew something was off," Grace continued. "The new phone. The sudden money. The lies. You've been falling, Deborah, and now I know someone's pushing you." Deborah's voice cracked. "You don't understand, Grace." "Then help me understand." Grace's voice trembled. "You're hurting, and you're pretending like everything's okay. But I see you. I see you, Deborah." Deborah swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. She wanted to speak, but the words felt dangerous. "I can't," she whispered. "Why?" Grace asked softly. "Because if I tell you, he'll come for me." Silence. Thick. Sharp. Grace stepped back. "Deborah, this isn't just a mistake anymore. This is abuse. This is control. And if you stay in it, you may not make it out." Deborah's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked fast. "Please," Grace said gently. "Let me help you. Tell your mom. Tell someone." Deborah shook her head. "If my father finds out, it'll destroy everything." Grace placed her hand on Deborah's shoulder. Not telling anyone might destroy you. Deborah looked down. And that's when Grace said it. If you won't tell, I will. Deborah's head snapped up, eyes wide. No, Grace. Please. But Grace's voice was calm, steady. I love you too much to stay silent. And with that, the truth had finally begun to break the surface. It happened on a Thursday. Deborah came home to silence. The kind that didn't feel peaceful. The kind that waits. The living room was dim. Her siblings were nowhere in sight. The TV was off. And Pastor Jude was sitting on the single couch, hands clasped, eyes stormy. Her father. Deborah froze at the doorway. Close the door, he said without looking up. She obeyed slowly, heartbeat thudding like a drum. He didn't shout. He didn't stand. That was worse. Pastor Jude only sat when the storm inside him was too loud to contain. Sit, he said. She sat. He looked up, and in that moment the mask broke. His eyes, those same eyes that once glowed with pride whenever she led worship, now held something else. Disbelief. Pain. Disgust. Your friend Grace came to the house, he said calmly. Said you've been sneaking out. Lying. That you've been involved with a man. Deborah's breath caught. Dad. Silence. His voice didn't rise. But it crushed her all the same. Do you know how many souls look up to this family? How many children call you their role model? And this is what you've been doing. Tears welled in Deborah's eyes. I didn't mean for it to. To what? His eyes burned. To disgrace this family? To spit on the pulpit where I preach. Deborah covered her face with her hands. I didn't plan it, Daddy. I wanted to feel free. Free? He echoed, rising now, voice rising with him. So you became a harlot? You stained your mother's name? You brought shame to God. Stop, Deborah cried. You don't understand what he did to me. That silenced him. Pastor Jude stared. He hit me, Deborah whispered, voice trembling. He controls me. He calls me all the time. He gave me things, but now I don't know how to leave. I'm scared, Daddy. I'm terrified. And just like that, Pastor Jude sat down again, like the wind had been knocked out of him. For a long time, he said nothing. Then quietly, brokenly, why didn't you come to me? Deborah looked up, eyes red. Because I didn't want to disappoint you. He reached for her hand. His voice cracked. You're my daughter, Deborah. You're allowed to fall. But don't ever think you have to fall alone. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing like a child. That night, for the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. But she also knew Oscar wasn't going to let her go that easily. It was 11:47 p.m. when he came. Deborah had just finished praying with her father. Real prayer that left your soul trembling. Mama J had cooked her favorite yam porridge. For the first time in months, the house felt like home again. But peace never lasts when the devil knows your name. The compound was quiet. The generator hummed softly in the background. Deborah had just closed her bedroom window when she saw it. Headlights. A black Benz. Her blood ran cold. She stepped back from the curtain, heart hammering. Her phone buzzed instantly. Oscar, come outside. Now. She didn't reply. Buzz. Debbie. Don't be stupid. I know you're awake. She ran to her door and locked it, chest tightening. Downstairs, someone knocked at the gate. Once. Twice. Then harder. Pastor Jude stirred from the parlor. Who's that at this hour? Deborah's heart dropped. No. Daddy, don't. But it was too late. He stepped outside. She rushed down behind him, whispering, It's him. It's Oscar. Pastor Jude's eyes darkened. The man who hit you? She nodded. He clenched his jaw. Stay inside. Daddy. Now. Deborah stood behind the curtains, peeking through as her father approached the gate. Oscar's voice cut through the night. Loud. Mocking. So this is the great Pastor Jude. Do you know what your daughter is? Do you know how many nights she's spent in my bed? Oscar's knees buckled. Pastor Jude didn't move. She begged me for money. For gifts. I gave her everything. Oscar sneered. Now she wants to act like a saint again? Deborah wanted to scream. To cover her ears. But her father's voice came low, controlled. You will leave this house. You will never come near my daughter again. And if you try, I will ensure Lagos knows what kind of man you are." Oscar laughed. "You think your God can protect her from me?" A car nearby flashed its headlights. 2 neighbors peeked out from their windows. Oscar noticed. He cursed, spat on the ground, and drove off, tires screeching like a wounded animal. Deborah burst into tears the moment the car disappeared. Pastor Jude came back inside. His hands were shaking. He hugged her and whispered, "He won't touch you again. Not while I breathe." But even as she nodded in his arms, a dark thought flickered in her mind. Oscar wasn't done, and she knew it. It started with a whisper. Then came the screenshots. Then the video. Deborah was sitting in the school cafeteria when she felt that stillness that only comes when something terrible is about to happen. Her classmates were all staring at their phones. Some gasped. Some laughed. Some looked at her with a mix of pity and disgust. Her own phone buzzed. From Grace. "Deborah, don't open Twitter. Please." But it was too late. She opened it, and there it was. A grainy, shaky, dimly lit video of her and Oscar in bed. She couldn't even breathe. Her own voice moaning. His voice laughing. Her face, undeniably hers. The gold bracelet he gave her glinted on her wrist. The caption, "Pastor Jude's daughter caught in leaked bedroom tape with Lagos big boy flushed face fire #Deborah the Saint." Deborah dropped her phone. Her heart was pounding so loudly she could barely hear the blood rushing through her ears. Her mouth went dry. People were filming her now. Right there in the cafeteria. She stood up. Someone muttered, "So this is the same girl who sings 'You Are Worthy' every Sunday? God really gets all types these days." Another voice sneered. She ran. Her feet hit the pavement outside the building like thunder. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. Her ears were ringing. Her face burned. Her throat was closing. Oscar. Only he had that video. Only he would do this. Her phone buzzed again. This time, no name. Just a message. "Next time, don't embarrass me." She fell to her knees on the grass outside the chapel. The same chapel where she used to lead worship. Deborah was ruined. Not quietly. Not in private. Publicly. And the world was watching. By the time she got home, the damage had spread. Her father's phone was blowing up. Mama J sat on the couch, her face pale, eyes swollen. She didn't even ask what happened. She already knew. Deborah stood in the middle of the living room, shaking. "I didn't know he filmed me. I swear I didn't know." Pastor Jude didn't speak. He was staring at the wall, searching for answers in invisible scripture. Then softly, without looking at her, "Do you still want to be saved?" Deborah broke. She fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands. "Yes." "Then we begin again," he said. "But this time we fight." Deborah didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, no, that had already chewed through her skin. She didn't sleep because she knew there was no going back to her old life. The tape had gone viral. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Some messages were cruel. Others were men pretending to understand. Girls mocked her. Boys passed her pictures like candy. And blogs, they chewed her up for breakfast. But in the house, something else was happening. Her mother prayed. Her father fasted. And Deborah got angry. Not in the world. Not at the gossip. At herself. For letting shame keep her silent. For confusing gifts for love. For believing a devil dressed in fine suits. So she stood in front of a mirror, tied her hair back, and deleted every picture, every contact, every memory of Oscar. Then she did the one thing she hadn't done in months. She knelt and said, "God, I'm still yours if you still have me." That prayer didn't wipe the internet clean. It didn't silence the whispers. But it woke up the girl buried under lashes, secrets, and lies. 1 week later, Deborah walked back into church. Heads turned. Phones clicked. Even the ushers froze. But Pastor Jude stood on the altar with his Bible open. When he saw his daughter, he smiled, not because she was perfect, but because she came home. He stepped up to the mic and said, "Before we begin, I want to remind everyone, this is not the church of perfect people. This is the church of broken people chasing a perfect God." Deborah stood beside him, eyes red, hands shaking. Then she took the mic. "I fell," she said, voice trembling. "I fell hard, and everything you saw online was real. I gave my heart to the wrong person. I let shame keep me in chains. But today I choose truth. I choose freedom. I choose God." The hall was silent. Some cried, some judged, but many listened, because they saw not just a scandal, they saw a resurrection. Today, Deborah no longer leads worship for applause. She does it for the girl she used to be, for the girls still pretending, still hiding, still bleeding behind makeup and filters. She tells them one thing: you are not your mistake. You are not your tape. You are not your past. You are more. And that was how the pastor's daughter lost herself and found something even greater: grace.